the new technology, now the people that are aware what's going on in that state, how they're living here in that state. In the past, when I left in 1985, the communication wasn't that advanced at that time, so people maybe not getting the right picture. Now they know a lot about what's going on in that state, but just definitely they ask about the people here, like how many Muslim here, are non-Muslim converting, becoming Muslim, especially with what's happening nowadays, and the media that talking about the Islam sometimes in a bad way. But alhamdulillah, I tell them, alhamdulillah, more people becoming interested in Islam, and when they see how the real Muslim are, they're becoming very interested and they convert and becoming Muslim. So just mainly we emphasize on the practicing what is the right Islam is.
MashaAllah. Well, Imad, thank you very much for spending some time with us. And I'm here in the Huda School, and I'm with the vice principal of the high school, and her name is Sister Khadija Bilal. Sister, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And welcome to the program, and for agreeing to spend some time with us and contribute to this documentary about Muslims here in the United States of America. But as we begin, Sister Khadija, I'd just like you to tell us a bit about yourself and your background and how you really reverted to Islam.
I was so blessed to have parents who had the foresight to come to America and to decide to have the first American child in the family, because that really helped in my reversion. I don't know if it would have happened in Cuba, where my family's from.
So your family came here. They decided that you would be born here in America.
Yes, my father made a conscious decision because he thought, this was 1949, that America was paved with gold, as many immigrants thought. And they didn't have much hope in Cuba. They were people of color. That meant that he had a third-grade education. My mom had a sixth-grade education. And they knew that if they could get to America and get their children here and have American children, that they would have a great future.
So, Sister, when your family decided to come here from Cuba, they made a conscious decision to have their first child born here in America? Or have a child born that was American?
Yes, this was my father's life dream, because he knew that if we came to America, his children were born here, they would have a future that he could never have in Cuba. He had a third-grade education, my mom had a sixth-grade education. They were people of color.
But let me ask you, because in my mind, when I think of Cuba, I think of one people, Cubans, you know. So are there people, I mean, is there racism based on colors in Cuba?
There was slavery in Cuba, just like it was here. There are the mulattoes, the mestizos, and the Caucasian. I don't know what other word to use. And they had different abilities within the society before Castro came. That's why the revolution with Castro was so major, because it did equalize everyone. Before that, there were the landowners, the rich, and there were the poor. There was no middle class. So you were either rich or you were the poor and then, see, Cuba was the playground of the mafia. This was their little island so my parents, basically, them and all their brothers and sisters, worked a lot for the mafia. You know, and people of color did not have any opportunities. Really.
Now, when they decided to come to America, was that something easy for them to do? Was it easy just to come to America?
No, it was difficult. My father came with my mother 7 months pregnant with me in 1949. They came on a visitor's pass visa just to give birth to me here. They knew that if a child was born in America, that child was American. So they came basically just so I would be born. And she was about 7, 8 months pregnant. I was born at City Hospital. And then they had to go back.
Which state was that?
This is New York.
New York.
They went back to Cuba. When they came back in 1955, I was 6 years old, so I spent my first 6 years in Cuba. Then we came back, and they landed on Ellis Island like all the other immigrants, and they didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. Today, my father owns my mother passed away, but before they passed, they retired to Florida with a gorgeous house. I mean, he has lived his life's dream. He has a pool, he plays tennis every day. I mean, it would be hard to think of him even as a Cuban now, because, I mean, of course, he's been here 50-some years. So that was my father's dream, to have a married, 2 of us, and we were the first ones. Then my father brought every member of the family over, his 6 brothers, my mother's 4 sisters and 2 brothers. He brought every single member of the family and my grandparents to America to have a better life here.
Right. And they did, huh?
Some did, and some actually went back after Castro. Yeah, some of my family went back, and they're very happy in Cuba, as contrary to common thought. I have many cousins and other family members in Cuba, and they're very happy. They did not like America. My grandparents hated America. They hated New York, let me put it that way. Living in tenement, cold water flats was just something my grandparents couldn't take. The winters like this. So they went back to their tropical island. And once Castro took over and equalized things in Cuba, because now my younger cousins are doctors, and the ones because everyone gets an equal opportunity now, based on skill, based on ability.
Right. And so did you get the opportunity to attend university here in America?
Yes, I did everything my parents expected. They were here so I would be educated, so that I would have a good job, and so that I would achieve the American dream like they did. And so I went all the way to the master's and working on my PhD. My daughter has completed her PhD. So I mean, my oldest child is 34, my baby's 20, everyone's gone to college. And my 28-year-old daughter has just finished her PhD this year.
And what was your major in?
I started off in mathematics and then went to educational leadership.
So tell us a bit about your process of reverting to Islam. And I say that, you know, because you have a real story about reverting to Islam.
Right. My cousin, my great cousin, did a family genealogy search, and she lives in California. I don't even really know her, but I heard about her, and she called my great aunt and told her, I just found the slave papers for the Falcon, which is one of the family names from 5 generations back, and I actually have the copy of the papers, and it shows that our ancestor was a Mandingo Moro, and they immediately called me. Like, weren't the Moros the Muslims that ruled Spain? And one of our last names is Betancourt, who was the president of Spain. So there is some connection to Spain, and you know, Spain and Morocco and Western Africa. So it looked like my family was transported from West Africa, the Mandingo Moros, and brought over to Louisiana, and from there something happened and they were shipped to Cuba. So I always say I'm Afro-Cuban. And so my ancestors were Muslim. It's pretty clear that they were. And it took many, many generations for me to find Islam again. But again, being in America and being in American university opened a lot of doors of knowledge to me. And even, I went to college in 1963. And, I mean, 1967, I entered college. And in 68 or 69, I took a course called Comparative Religions. And in that course was the first time I've heard of Islam. They didn't spend a lot of time on it. I had a Jewish instructor. He spent a lot of time, it was a woman actually. She spent a lot of time on Judaism, which I didn't know anything about either. And so my search for spirituality began then, after 12 years of Catholic school and wanting to be a nun. And when I found out about Islam and actually came to Islam, what was wonderful for me was that I could be a nun and still be married. I could live this kind of cloistered life, but it would be still in the world. I could still devote my whole self to God and or Allah, and still work. And you know, I didn't have to be in a convent, in a nunnery, to have this connection with God, because I felt in the Catholic religion that I couldn't talk to God directly. I had to go through the priest. But if I were a nun, then I could talk to God myself. So I said, oh, that's what I want. This was at 14 and 15 years old. I said, I want to talk to God directly. I felt that spirituality. In Islam, every person can talk to Allah. You can have a personal, direct relationship with God. You can be as spiritual and committed to Islam as you want. Like, while you're talking, I could be thinking about Allah. I could be doing dhikr. I could be remembering Allah. I could be in a constant state of remembrance of God all day long, and still work and still have children and all these things, and I used to go with the nuns. I used to go to silent retreats for weekends, for a week at a time.
And what's that mean?
A silent retreat means you did not talk the entire weekend. All you did was pray. And the beautiful convents in the Catskill Mountains with all the beautiful streams, and I would sit